I think there's something to be said about those Japanese video games. You know, the kind known for their sort of quirky absurdism due to unconventional game mechanics. It's an accurate label, sure, but I do find it kind of devaluing to a game as a whole. At the very least, it's definitely a lot easier to call a game weird as a sort of all-encompassing term without actually describing what makes the game special. Katamari Damacy has to be one of the flagship quirky Japanese video games. It's certainly one of the most talked about ones at the very least. Something about this game just really caught on with the North American audience. I think the game has a sort of alluring effect on people for whatever reason. I think that's why I ultimately don't like boiling a game's success down to its quirkiness. There's just gotta be something deeper that draws people in. Something not so surface level. And so, I would really like to examine Katamari Damacy. I've always had a soft spot for this game for a variety of reasons, so I want to do the game justice and explain just what it is that makes this game so damn interesting. For those of you who haven't played it though, I suppose it's necessary to answer the question, well, what the hell are you looking at? Well, let's start with a brief history. The Katamari series saw its start thanks to Keita Takahashi. After studying sculpting in college and realizing it wasn't for him, he ended up joining Namco as an artist in 1999. During his time as an artist, he played a part in a number of the company's smaller projects, most notably an unreleased game called Action Drive. Supposedly, it would have played similar to Crazy Taxi, but with spy-based elements? It was during the game's short-lived early stages that Takahashi conceptualized some of the main characters that would go on to star in Katamari Damacy: the King, the Queen, and the Prince of All Cosmos. The plot followed the Queen getting kidnapped by a group of agents on Earth, and the lazy King sending the Prince to go save her instead. The central mechanics seem to have revolved around the Prince's hammer-shaped head, which you would have used to knock out driving humans and control their driving with a tiny steering wheel on their head. Yeah, really out there idea to say the least. I certainly would have loved to play it, but unfortunately Namco ended up pulling the plug on the project before it could really get off the ground. It was around this time that Takahashi had a growing interest in being more than just an artist for Namco. Specifically, he had a growing interest in creating a game. Eventually, he conceptualized a game idea wherein the player would roll around a sphere that would pick up ordinary objects, making it grow over time and allowing you to roll up larger and larger things. Seeing it as an opportunity to reuse his trio of characters from Action Drive, he proposed the concept to his colleagues who agreed that the idea had potential. Obviously though, being in the art department, there wasn't exactly an easy way for him to propose the idea to Namco themselves. Thankfully, he had a way in. His former boss guided him toward a student program at Namco. A small group of 3D modeling students would get the opportunity to create a game prototype's plethora of models for their college thesis course. So, after about 6 months, and with the help of some students and a couple of Namco devs, they would produce a prototype of Katamari Damacy. For the GameCube? Yeah, so despite the final game releasing for the PS2, this prototype was actually developed for the GameCube due to Sony not providing PS2 dev kits at launch, interestingly enough. I would love to see some footage of this prototype someday, but alas, all we have are a couple of low-res images to my knowledge. Katamari Damacy though, what a name, what does that even mean? Well, in Japanese, Katamari means clump, and Damacy means spirit. So, clump spirit, I guess that makes sense. Anyway, suffice to say, the prototype was a success. After an internal review with Namco, the game was greenlit for full development and would later release in early 2004 in Japan, seeing a North American localization about half a year later. It wasn't released in PAL regions due to fear that the game was just too weird for the market over there. The game saw moderate success in Japan, with a surprising amount of success in North America. Not that it sold like crazy or anything, but yeah, at the time it was still pretty uncommon for such a strange Japanese game to perform so well in the West. Above all else, critics lauded it for its unique gameplay, which, yeah, that much is clearly true. There's a lot to love about Katamari Damacy though. So, let's take a look at what makes this game so damn special. The first thing you see after booting it up is the file select screen. Each save file is represented by a different section of the Namco logo, which you roll right into to load up. Then we're greeted by this incredible intro sequence. This is where we get our first taste of this game's lovely soundtrack, accompanied by cows, pandas, and, of course, the King, Queen, and Prince of All Cosmos. I think this sets a pretty good precedent for what's to come, what with how all over the place this game is. The plot revolves around the king of all cosmos who has destroyed tons of stars in the night sky because he just felt like it, I guess. So naturally, instead of taking any responsibility for his actions, he sends in his son, the Prince of all Cosmos, to roll around this ball called the Katamari, make it massive by rolling up as much as possible, and tossing it out into the cosmos where it becomes a star. It's up to the prince to repopulate the night sky. Simple enough. For real though, the king is a douchebag, man. In the most amusing way possible, I'll clarify. He just loves to interject during gameplay and take up like half the screen while doing so. He gets pissed if you fail a stage. I mean, geez, the prince cowering in fear, poor guy. I mean, the guy's so self-absorbed and regal, he even refers to himself as we. It's capitalized too, come on, man. But ultimately, it's for these reasons that I kinda love the guy anyway. He's gotta be one of the most terrible fathers in gaming, but I just can't help having a soft spot for the jerk. Anyway, after that flashy introduction, the king shows us the ropes before we jump on in. Controlling the prince as he pushes around the Katamari is very particular. There's really nothing else quite like it. So this game essentially sports tank controls wherein forward will always move you forward while left and right will have you turn around or move horizontally in a strafing sort of motion. However, distinctly, the game utilizes both the left and right sticks of the PS2 controller. Just pushing one of them forward will have you remain stationary and rotate around the Katamari. You'll have to push both of them in the direction you want to go in order to actually move around. Conversely, pushing one upward and the other downward will result in you sort of steering the Katamari while it's in motion. To roll up over small ledges, you just hold both sticks forward. Though, more often than not, you'll probably find yourself just falling right back down. It's pretty annoying trying to ascend over ledges in this game, I can't lie. It feels like a coin flip whether it actually wants to work or not. Tapping R1 leads you to jump way up in the air to get a more bird's eye view of the stage. Similarly, tapping L1 allows you to go into first person and get a better idea of your environment. Oh hey look, there's the king. These aren't essential, but they can be a pretty good resource for finding out what you're up against in the midst of a stage. You can also tap both R3 and L3 at the same time to do this quick 180. This is essential for turning around as quickly as possible. And finally, slamming the sticks up and down rapidly leads you to roll up the Katamari and charge forward with it. This can be super helpful for covering large amounts of ground, though there is a cooldown so you can't spam the thing. With all these moves at your disposal, the game is essentially this give and take where you guide the Katamari to the best of your abilities while keeping in mind the time limit and trying to be as efficient as possible. Now, these controls tend to be difficult to get a grip on at first for most people. At the very least, I definitely remember being a bit off-put by them myself when I first played the game several years ago. But very quickly I grew to absolutely love them. Really, the best way to think about it is that each stick represents one of the prince's hands. It's all about guiding the Katamari by pushing each of his hands in the direction you want him to go. It leads to this unmatched game feel where nearly every single input is consolidated to just 2 sticks. I've praised Luigi's Mansion for similar reasons. Every input on the sticks leads to an equal outcome in the game. That one-to-one action and reaction, it just feels so good. Makes it all the more unusual that this game's 2018 remaster, Katamari Damacy REROLL, has the option to switch to a more traditional playstyle with the left stick alone controlling the Katamari. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for accessibility, and if you need such a mode to play the game, there's nothing wrong with that, but for me at least, I kind of view the unconventional control scheme as, you know, part of the original intent of the game, with each stick simulating one of the prince's hands. I just think the game is simple enough as is, and removing that little bit of a learning curve it does have doesn't do the game any favors. Of course, it's just an option you can toggle on and off, so it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. The remaster itself is a perfectly fine way to play the game. It's really just a straight port of the original game to Unity, just with a higher resolution and a fresh coat of paint. I played the PS2 version for this video, and I personally prefer the aesthetics of the original release just a little bit, but I don't think one is necessarily better or worse than the other. It really just comes down to personal preference. Now me, I just prefer the squinty eyes of the prince on the PS2, that's all. Ultimately, they control identically, and really, once you get past the initial awkwardness, this game's controls are an absolute joy. Which is good, cause you'll be utilizing them as you progress through each and every stage. Katamari Damacy has a very unique sense of progression. Like I said, the game generally revolves around rolling up as much as you possibly can into your Katamari, getting larger and larger along the way. It's sort of comparable to rolling up a ball of snow. In the earlier levels, you start out real small, like a measly few centimeters large. The Katamari can only pick up stuff roughly less than or equal to its size, so you start by rolling up thumbtacks, dice, matches, stuff like that. Eventually, you could roll up slightly bigger things like fruits, flower pots, and even cats. Then you'll be able to roll up people, then cars, trees, buildings, and eventually entire islands. I love the sense of progression in this game. I really just can't get enough of it. Going from such a minuscule size to just being able to absolutely plow through everything in your path is unbelievably satisfying. I would honestly label it as one of the most cathartic experiences I've ever had with a video game. Each object or person also has its own unique sound effects for picking them up. These range from pleasant little tactile sounds to violent screaming, along with plenty of other interesting vocalizations. You can actually listen to them all in the collection menu. It catalogs everything you've rolled up and organizes them by their size, category, and location. A pretty nice addition for completionists. There's about 1,500 things total to roll up in this game, so it can certainly keep you busy for a good while. You can access this on the prince's home planet. Yeah, this is essentially your home base of sorts, which you can also save your game on and tweak the sound settings. It's also where you can give the prince these cute little outfits. You unlock them by rolling up these presents hidden throughout many of the game's stages, which the king intended for the prince, but dropped them somewhere along the way every single time, cause of course he did. You just gotta make sure the present stays in the Katamari after you roll it up, because it is prone to falling out if you crash into something or manage to get stuck. Which, yeah, one of the issues you might run into is the sort of janky collision in certain spots. This can lead to getting stuck in tight spaces at times. The game solves this by sending objects you've rolled up flying off of the Katamari until you have enough space to freely move around again. This can obviously be a bit irritating, especially considering the time limit, but when it comes down to it, this is a pretty uncommon occurrence, so I don't think it brings down the game in any way. Just something to keep in mind, as you might want to avoid tight crevices if you can. It's also a good idea to keep in mind the general shape of what you're rolling up. Elongated objects will cause your Katamari to take on a bit of a lopsided effect, which you'll have to do your best to work around. This kind of brings me to the question of, well, what genre would you really say this game is? I suppose for a game focused on efficiency and planning out your movements on the fly, I would say it's a puzzle strategy game. I think that's the most accurate descriptor, but ultimately I would kind of say that this game and the Katamari series by extension almost sort of fall under their own unique genre in a way. The game is so unapologetically itself that I kinda think labeling it as a puzzle game is a bit disingenuous and misleading to the real core of what makes Katamari what it is. The game is genre-defying, there's really just nothing else quite like it. Part of what really makes this game so damn unique is the level design. So there's 3 main areas you'll be rolling around in: the house, the town, and the world. Pretty explicit sense of progression there. Now, I will say right off the bat that, yeah, 3 total maps is not a lot by any stretch. When you divide 3 areas up among 20 or so different levels, you inevitably get a lot of overlap, with some levels just sort of blending together in my head. It certainly helps that you get to see more and more of an area the larger the size goal is, but it does sort of lead to this back and forth of having to play through the same area again just to see a little bit more of it before starting over and repeating the process. Even so, the way each level is populated by people and objects keeps them interesting enough in my opinion. I mean, shit is just going on in this game. It's so easy to be laser focused on efficiency and just kind of go on autopilot as you complete a level as quickly as possible. But when you really stop and smell the roses, the game world is filled with these hilarious scenarios that really add to the game's charm, the simple graphical style being the cherry on top. It helps that you can even find a camera as one of the king's presents, allowing you to take photos of whatever you want and even save them to the memory card. Overall, the level design is pretty simple, but still really lovable, although a bit more variety certainly would have gone a long way in setting each level apart just a little bit more. You access each stage by selecting it as you float around in Earth's orbit. You'll be rolling around your Katamari in two main types of stages, the Make a Star stages and the Constellation stages. The Make a Star stages are pretty self-explanatory. Roll up as much as you can before time runs out, and reach the required minimum for each stage before turning the Katamari into a star. Levels are also often sectioned off in such a way that you've got to be a certain size to enter certain areas. Oftentimes, you can grow quite far beyond the quota to a point where your Katamari becomes sparkly or has angels floating around it. This is how you know you've reached some of the highest possible size categories, which are divided up by the camera zooming out and the screen blurring up. A pretty clever way to hide the fact that the game is loading in new objects and unloading others. By achieving this ultimate status in some of the game's stages, you can unlock their eternal variants in the post-game, which, hence the name, lets you play at your leisure without having to worry about a time limit. You can also receive a shooting star for a stage if you reach the size goal fast enough. These don't do anything as far as I could tell, but they're a welcome incentive for efficiency, I suppose. After each Make a Star stage, you get a little snippet of this side story following the Hoshino family down on Earth. It follows the son, Mutsuo, who sees on the news that the stars have disappeared from the night sky. He vehemently tries to tell his mom about this, but she just doesn't believe him. I really just don't find these very interesting, admittedly. I do kind of enjoy the idea of getting a slice of life on Earth during the events of the game and all, but the story's just kinda boring, to be honest. The Constellation stages, on the other hand, have you fulfilling some sort of alternative task as you roll things up. Like, for example, in the stage for Gemini, everything is placed in pairs, and it's up to you to roll up as many twins as you can. Or there's the stage for Corona Borealis, which has you rolling up as many crowns as possible, whether they're littered about on the ground or on the heads of others. You get the idea, right? These stages generally follow the same formula of just rolling up as many of one thing as possible, with a couple exceptions. The infamous example is Taurus. The stage places you among a sea of different types of cows, the catch being that you can only roll up one. Naturally, the goal is to get as big as possible to roll up one huge cow, but this is easier said than done because what defines a cow is stretched very thinly in this stage. I mean, these traffic cones, really? It's so easy to accidentally run into these. You have to be very careful with your movements. The same stage gimmick is also used for Ursa Major, where you've got to do the same, but you guessed it, for a bear. I'll admit these stages are pretty damn funny, but in terms of actually playing them, they are not all that fun. Thankfully, if you're not a completionist or anything, you can feel free to just roll up whatever you run into first. There's also another one-off stage, Make the North Star. You've got to roll up a Katamari that's as close to exactly 10 meters as possible, but you have no size indicator at the top left. It's an interesting challenge that definitely requires a lot of game knowledge, but I don't know, it's just kind of alright. The daughter of the Hoshinos, Michiru, does have her own little segments after each Constellation stage. She gives some sort of explanation as to how they found their way back into the night sky. They're very surreal, to say the least. To cap off the 9 Make a Star stages, the final level in the game sequentially is Make the Moon. Yeah, the king broke that one too. The size quota being a whopping 300 meters. Much larger than any previous Make a Star stage, which I find kind of hilarious considering how infinitesimally small the moon is comparative to a star. But anyway, as one final foray, this level is an amazing 25-minute send-off. I mean, just for perspective, by the end of it, you'll have rolled up this entire island that you started on with ease. Suffice to say, this level is a pure joy to play and a worthy finale to the game. After one last flashy cutscene in the same vein as the intro one, the credits roll and you can roll around the moon to try rolling up every country on Earth. I love it when games have little bonus challenges in the credits like this. It helps that it's paired alongside such a lovely closing song, which finally brings me to this game's incredible soundtrack. I mean, besides the central mechanics, it's probably what this series is most well known for. The first track in the game that really sticks out to me is The Moon and the Prince. It is so damn catchy. Another obvious highlight is Lonely Rolling Star, probably the most popular song from this game, and rightfully so. also really like Cherry Blossoms, also known as Cherry Tree Times or Cherry Blossom Color Season. Not sure why this one has so many alternate titles. Admittedly, I'm not a huge fan of the children singing, but the instrumental piece is genuinely so beautiful. This game's soundtrack is truly something special. With so many standout tracks, it really is the cherry on top of this wonderful little game. Katamari Damacy isn't perfect. Well, music aside, of course. There's a number of small nitpicks I have regarding its short length, odd collision, and level variety, as well as the multiplayer mode being a bit lackluster. I mean, hell, I didn't even bring it up earlier. You just compete with a friend to knock each other around and see who can make the largest Katamari. You can choose to play as any of the prince's cousins. There's some pretty cute ones here. They even show up across the game's levels after beating the game. This mode is fine, there's just not a whole lot to it really. At least you could shower the loser in frying pans though. Thankfully, the next Katamari game would go on to expand upon the multiplayer, as well as the cousins for that matter, but we'll save that for another time. The first one is still a really solid game though, and a worthy start to a beloved video game series. If you haven't yet played it, I really can't recommend it enough. The remaster's available on all modern platforms, and the original's just as good too if you have the means to play it. Katamari Damacy is delightful, and I really think everyone deserves the chance to play this special little game. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon. Bye.